After the shooting in Minneapolis, Trump decided to announce a $500 billion increase to the military budget that he envisions, turning it from a $1 trillion military budget to a $1.5 trillion military budget. Mind you, again, the Obamacare extension, the subsidies, the Affordable Care Act subsidies were not extended. Premiums are going up for tens of millions of Americans, and there is no solution inbound at all. Maybe there could be something that could be worked on, but that has not been announced. But here's another $500 billion for the defense ministry. I have determined that for the good of our country, especially in these very troubled and dangerous times, our military budget for the year 2027 should not be $1 trillion, but rather $1.5 trillion. This will allow us to build the dream military that we have long been entitled to, and more importantly, that will keep us safe and secure regardless of foe. If it weren't for the tremendous number being produced by tariffs from other countries, many of which in the past have ripped off the United States at levels never before seen, I would stay at $1 trillion number. But because of tariffs and the tremendous income that they bring, amounts being generated, that would have been unthinkable in the past, especially just 1 year ago during Sleepy Joe Biden's administration, the worst president in the history of our country. We are able to easily hit the $1.5 trillion number while at the same time producing an unparalleled military force and having the ability to, at the same time, pay down debt and likewise pay a substantial dividend to moderate income patriots within our country. President Donald J. Trump. So do you hear that? We're going to increase the military budget by 50%. We're going to give substantial payouts to moderate income patriots, is how he describes them. Moderate income patriots. But I guess he's going to choose and pick which moderate income patriots, because that was the case when it comes to the $1,776 payout, very original, to 2/3 of the U.S. military, but not the majority. I mean, not all of it. Just 2/3. The ones that they determined are warriors, whatever that means. No, I guess if you're an engineer, maybe that it's different. You know, you're serving your country in a way that's not warrior enough to get the dividend. Either way, $1.5 trillion military budget. We're going to pay out more dividends, and at the same time, we're going to pay down the debt. Mind you, the Congressional Budget Office expects the national debt to continue to increase under the Donald Trump administration, the same president who said he would get rid of all of the debt by the end of his first term, which was, 6 years ago. What's interesting here is he seems to premise the idea that getting this increase in the military budget, getting new dividends to minimum income, moderate income patriots, that's the terminology he uses, as well as this decrease in the debt is only possible due to the tariffs and due to the tariffs revenue. Mind you, whether or not we're going to be able to even access that revenue is still caught up in the courts, because the courts are still deliberating whether or not the president of the United States placing one of the most substantive taxes on the American people without the say of Congress is legal, since Congress ultimately carries the power of the purse. Not the president of the United States. Congress carries the power of the purse. So they're determining whether it's legal. And if it's determined to be not legal, whether or not the presidency in the United States government can even retain that money is up to question. There is a scenario where the court might decide that that money has to be given back to the organizations that they was taxed from. But it's not like the organizations that it was taxed from is going to end up giving money back to the American consumers who have already had to pay higher prices on the goods that they purchase, which would mean paybacks for the companies that actually had to pay the tariff costs, but the burden of the tariff increase would still have been felt by the American consumer. Fun. Isn't that fun? Isn't that great? Either way, it's not making up enough money to do any of this, because we don't even know if we're going to be able to access the money in the first place. And even if we can, it's still not going to be substantial enough to both increase the military budget by $500 billion every year, pay out more dividends to the American public like your Andrew Yang, And also, there, I cast a magic spell and it worked that time. Get rid of the debt. These tariffs are the highest tax increases in U.S. history. Yes, and apparently they can be done through emergency powers by the U.S. president, which he says is of a national security interest. But the national security interest somehow narrowed from entire countries down to industries, down to specific companies, before being down to specific products. Yeah, I think its legal case is dubious. Donald Trump prepping for war? What's this? Oh my. This 2:08 p.m. All United States defense contractors and the defense industry as a whole, beware. While we make the best military equipment in the world, no other country is even close, defense contractors are currently issuing massive dividends to their shareholders and massive stock buybacks at the expense and detriment of investing in plants and equipment. The situation will no longer be allowed or tolerated. That's actually a real issue. Also, executive pay packages in the defense industry are exorbitant and unjustifiable, given how slowly these companies are delivering vital equipment to our military and our allies. This is also, well, true. Salaries, stock options, and every other form of compensation are far too high for these executives. Defense companies are not producing our great military equipment rapidly enough, and, once produced, not maintained it properly or quickly. From this moment forward, these executives must build new and modern production plants, both for delivering and maintaining this important equipment and for building the latest models of future military equipment. Until they do so, no executive should be allowed to make in excess of $5 million, which, as high as it sounds, is a mere fraction of which they are making now. Additionally, you know what this sounds like? This sounds very populist. This sounds like talking about a real issue about high expense numbers for low quantities but highly accurate systems, which is a real issue, combined with the populism of, look at these defense executives making all this money while you're not making shit. Now, this doesn't deal with the fact that nobody's making shit, but this does deal with, I mean, when it comes to money, but maybe it could help apply a little pressure when it comes to the fact of nobody making shit in reference to artillery shells. If we are not going to use that influence, if we're not going to use that leverage in Ukraine or anywhere of significance where it's useful, because everywhere that Trump has applied that pressure, it's been areas where he already has huge asymmetrical advantages. He could maybe just want to keep the asymmetrical advantage in Latin America, that asymmetrical advantage over Iranian airspace. But if you're going to make these investments, what do we even spend the money on? Because if not, it just becomes a shiny thing in storage. Again, like, hey, we got nothing left for the Ukrainians, but we got enough for a $1.5 trillion defense budget. But we have $500 billion laying around, but for every single year, but we didn't have enough for $150 billion after nearly 4. I don't buy it. Oh, by the way, we need to acquire Greenland because of Russia's national security threat. But also, we can't send the equipment to Ukraine for dealing with Russia over. No. It's horribly cost ineffective. By the way, why is it that the way that we always register American power is how much money we spend on a program? I don't know how healthy that is. I understand that by having more resources, like more money, you have more, possibly in the tank. But there's also questions of like purchasing power parity. There's also questions about the quantity of the items that we make, which Trump touched on in that post. By just saying like, well, we're going to go from 1 trillion to 1.5 trillion. Is that was that determined by saying, oh, these are the needs? These are the needs of the U.S. forces. These are the needs for munitions. These are the needs for repair. These are the needs for staffing. These are the needs for everything that's necessary, from food to just keeping the lights on. And we need to expand it by this much. And these are the was that done that way? With the questions placed about how we can reduce costs to the best of our ability to make the dollar stretch to get more purchasing power parity? Or is it just 1.5 trillion sounds more powerful than 1 trillion. 1 trillion used to be more than the next 10 countries combined, but now it's just more than the next 8. Let's get it back over to the next 10. Let's make it 1.5 trillion. In fact, let's try to aim for the next 15. Sometimes it just sounds like you're throwing monetary numbers around to meet like a type of political or type of like aesthetic pressure rather than meeting the actual physical needs. I mean, I think I could get a lot further with $1 billion in Ukraine than $2 billion in Germany, just due to how the defense sector is and how purchasing power parity plays out. So, I mean, there's not only a question about where our money is best spent if we're trying to meet defense interests like countering the Russians in Iceland. Ukraine's right there, buddy. But there's also questions of, are we just throwing out these numbers arbitrarily, or are they meant to actually achieve something? Because $500 billion, I mean, that's Obamacare subsidy extensions right there. That's the aid we've sent to Ukraine over 3 times over in just 1 year. Because they need to, like, I have this big fear that Europe, in order to build up in response to the Russians, are all just going to invest in their own national defense industry. And while on its face that sounds good, I think that German money and Rheinmetall money can go a lot further in, say, Ukraine, and that's why they're building production facilities there, some, thankfully, than it can in Germany. They can run factories 7 days a week in Ukraine. They pay the workers less. The regulations are different, and the materials available, the logistics are a bunch of different things come together to make it a lot less expensive, so you can produce more shells, more munitions, more equipment at less money, and possibly at even a faster pace, and every single day instead of just 5 or 6 days a week. And not only every single day, but every single hour of every single day, because Ukraine is in national survival mode. So that means the factories don't just run 1 or 2 hours, they run 24. As long as it's not literally broken down, that factory should be pumping out munitions. And so I worry that instead of aiming your okay, let's aim where the power purchasing parity is the best. Let's aim for, maybe some former Yugoslav states, or let's aim for maybe setting this factory up in Romania or Bulgaria, or let's set this factory up in Ukraine. Instead, it'll be set up in districts where you know that you'll get the most political reward for your existing party. That if you build a factory here, it will cost more, you'll have less, and it will take longer to build, but that means more jobs in your locality, and that means more votes for your party. And so the political rewards for you in the immediacy might end up being calculated more than the national security interests of your state and of the entire continent in the long term. And so I do sometimes wonder if not only is that contributing to what's happening in the United States when it comes to throwing out these numbers, just throwing out arbitrary numbers, but also there's a question of, profiteering. So I would like for the presidency to explain these numbers much more, break them down for the general public. I don't expect that from Trump. This is the same presidency that, after attacking all the warmongers in his first term, okay, the signs were always there for those who told you, "Oh, I had no clue Trump was could act like a warmonger." Your John Mearsheimers, John Knuckledraggers of the world. But Donald Trump in the first term, he was restricting information on the drone strikes that he was increasing in rapid quantity. I mean, we're talking about quantity of like 90 to 95% more than the Biden administration that would follow it. And at the same time, they're increasing the quantity of these drone strikes and approving military operations that were denied by the Obama administration due to their danger. That's the same period that's increasingly restricting the information that journalists, the general public, and freedom of information requests can get off of American drone strike. So increase the quantity and decrease the transparency. 5 trillion, man. Inflation can't be that bad. Like, what if the goal is then we're spending $200 billion when we on ship production, when maybe we only need to spend $100 billion on ship production if we were cooperating more with the Europeans, who, to be blunt, 1, 2, okay, yeah. Sorry to be mean to American ship manufacturers, but they can produce them faster at a lower cost. And let's just say our recent, Constellation ship project didn't exactly go swimmingly, did it? swimmingly. God, the Constellation series of ships. If you want to understand a disaster in American military procurement, go look that up. My God.
A curd is a curd.
The entire concept of what war is conducted like is changed. Trump has no idea what he is talking about. He is living in a world that not only doesn't exist but never did.
1.5 trillion. I mean, like, tariffs have never been able to pay for the defense budget. I don't know what the fuck he's even talking about, really. He wants to build battleships. Trump does like the battleships.